yes, it sounds like Trump team might be delay, but so is the prosecution because they're the ones screwing up here and giving Trump a gift. So I'm not sure Trump is to be blamed for that.
Well, who would have thought SDNY would send a gift with a bow on it like that to Donald Trump? But here we are.
I don't think
Mick
it's SDNY.
Mulvaney.
I don't think it's SDNY.
I know.
That would make a difference. This is the state court.
Well, they
right?
decided to show up late with the documents. I mean, this could have been handled earlier, as it turns out. But I know your feelings about January 6th. Mick, do you feel like Jack Smith's trial ought to be heard before people vote?
Yeah, the answer is yes. The reason I'm hesitating is that we have to understand that the right to a speedy trial in this country accrues to the benefit of the accused, not the government. And I understand, folks accusing Trump of delay, probably a smart move. On the flip side of that is the government rushing to some type of prosecution. And are they making mistakes because of it? I think there's a fair conversation to have. Everybody knows who's been sued that justice doesn't work really, really quickly in this country. And there are tools available to you legally, ethically, constitutionally to slow things down. And that's exactly what Trump is doing. So my takeaway from this, Joe, is that the left is really, really good at hating Donald Trump, but apparently they're not really, really good at prosecuting court cases. So I expect Jack Smith to be a lot better.
That does appear to be the case. And by the way, I'm not making a judgment against delay. Mick, you use whatever tools you have, depending on what side of the case you're on. I completely understand that. I'm just amazed at how effective it has been. My God, we're talking about 91 counts one day, and we could have a world in which there are no trials before the election. There's a lot to talk about here as Donald Trump heads to Ohio this weekend, Mick Mulvaney, and Joe Biden tries to protect his blue wall, as we call it. And you can kind of look at that over the course or track it across the Rust Belt where this election is going to be decided. What's Donald Trump's message in Ohio this weekend?
Oh, I think it's the same as anywhere else. On the economy, are you better off than you were when I was president? That's a fairly easy message to take. On this larger sort of narrative about the weaponization of government, which sounds really esoteric, he gets it down to a real clear message, which is, can you believe what they're doing to me? Look at me. I'm rich, I'm famous, and I'm white. And they're doing this to me. Imagine what they could do to you if they want to pick on you for a while. Elect me and I'll make sure that doesn't happen. That's a real powerful message. You talk about the blue wall, and I get it. And I think, Trump is going to have difficulties in Pennsylvania and Michigan. I don't think there's anybody who's looking around at Ohio as a swing state. Ohio is probably Trump by a good margin. The best evidence of that, Joe, is probably when Joe Biden didn't go to East Palestine for a year. And even with Sherrod Brown on the line. So I think the Republicans are feeling pretty good about Ohio. They're still, got a lot of work to do in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and the like.
It is interesting when you talk about 4 years ago, and, I won't even point you to the job market or the economic data because I know the inflation remains a big problem compared to where we were 4 years ago. But we were in the throes of a pandemic 4 years ago, and I wonder if the president will try to remind people of that. Mick, there's a lot going on in Washington I need to ask you about here. The Taoiseach is up on the Hill today. You know what that's all about as the former special envoy to Northern Ireland and as a former member of Congress. But it's looking like a week from now, we're not going to be telling jokes on Capitol Hill because the government might be shutting down. Do you think there's a chance we find another stopgap, or can Mike Johnson pull this off when he gets back from West Virginia?
Well, I mean, what would history teach us? History would teach us that the statistical likelihood is that they're going to find a stopgap. Right? I don't think anybody's really hankering for a shutdown. There is a chance you get one by accident. We've had a couple of those in the past. I'll never forget when I was down at OMB and someone walked in and said, Rand Paul just did something on the Senate floor and they can't vote before midnight. So technically we'll have a shutdown for a day or something like that. So that these things happen, these accidental shutdowns, but I don't see the same sort of dynamic you saw in 2019 when folks are saying, let's shut the government down until we get more money for, in that case, the wall. There's a group here who would love to do that on the Hill, but they're very, very small. So I think it's going to be another stopgap. I think it'll probably increase spending as it always does. They'll figure out a way to get around the 1% automatic cuts because Washington never spends less. But my guess is, they'll either cut a big deal or a small deal, but I don't think they're going to shut down unless it's by accident.
Well, it's this is interesting now. The Homeland Security, DHS, appears to be a sticking point here because it involves the border. That's probably not a shocker. And reports would suggest that we basically get a continuing resolution for that one agency, and then the rest, the other 5 bills come together in what we're so cute now in Washington, we're calling a criminibus, CR.
Wow, that's
And
one I haven't heard before. I've heard Crumbus.
did you?
And I've heard
Yeah,
minibus. I've never
if this
heard
is new to
minibus.
you, then I'm proud of myself. Is this getting a little bit too cute for you, or could something like that pass?
Yeah, but I'm a budget geek. Of course it could pass. The people don't care. Voters don't care. There's a very small percentage of voters on the right wing who care a lot about spending, and most voters really, really don't care, and they don't follow this. I will go to my grave believing that shutdowns don't have any impact whatsoever in politics. People just don't care about them. Can this pass? Sure, it can pass. Just about anything can pass when you're spending money in Washington. Question is, will it on time? I think there's a will to do that, but the place is so dysfunctional. Again, they may accidentally slip past the deadline, as they almost did last week, and will do again in the future.
Spending time with Mick Mulvaney here on Bloomberg TV and radio. You might have heard about the letter from White House counsel Edward Siskel wrote a note to Mike Johnson making fun of him in the effort to impeach Joe Biden. I write to you today, he says in the letter, because it is clear the House Republican impeachment is over. Is he right?
No, I mean, keep in mind the way the first Trump impeachment worked. The second one was different because that was January 6th. It was very quick. The first Trump impeachment actually started with an impeachment inquiry. The general consensus on the Hill at the time was that there was no basis for an actual impeachment, but Nancy Pelosi needed to sort of salve to give something to her left wing. So she gave an impeachment inquiry. And that's when Trump made the stunning decision to release the transcript of his conversation with Zelensky in Ukraine, which is what then led immediately to the impeachment shortly after that. So I think the Republicans are looking their hands over and say, look, Trump screwed up and gave them a bunch of evidence that they didn't have, and it turned into impeachment. Maybe the Democrats will make the same type of mistake. I'm not aware of the evidence they say they've collected. They say they've got some good stuff. They have to have a smoking gun to go after the president. They really, really do. But my guess is this impeachment inquiry will go on for as long as it's still politically beneficial to the Republicans.
Amazing. I've only got a minute left, Mick. You heard what the chair of the NRCC is talking about. Richard Hudson says Republicans are not going to lose the House in November. They're actually going to grow the majority. He's pointing to low polling for Joe Biden. He's pointing to redistricting that turned out to, in the speaker's words, be a wash. Do you agree with that?
It's fascinating. I'm skeptical because I understand the general sort of direction that Washington is going. I understand the seats that are at risk and the Biden seats versus. I get all that, but there's some data out there that might support what Richard is saying, what Hudson is saying. The Republicans are up by more than 10 points the last time I checked on a generic ballot. They were up by 6 in 2010. The folks I've talked to who are not crazy in the Republican conference would tell you, look, Mick, we don't know. We might lose 30 seats. We might win 30 seats. We might tie. We have no idea. It's all over the map right now. And I think that might be right. Hudson's not necessarily wrong.